Despite the fact that Canada has been lauded for its consistency, inclusiveness, and high quality of life for a considerable amount of time, the country is progressively grappling with a confluence of issues that have affected both its reputation in the worldwide community and its well-being within its boundaries. As they observe structural difficulties that affect every aspect of their day-to-day lives, such as housing and economic stability, education, healthcare, and immigration, a significant number of Canadians are now voicing emotions of helplessness. Each and every aspect of their lives is being impacted by these difficulties. In light of the fact that these feelings are a reflection of more fundamental structural concerns that have accumulated over the course of the past decade, citizens are beginning to question whether or not the social and economic institutions of the country are capable of keeping up with the demands of modern society. One of the most visible and urgent problems that Canada is currently facing is the housing crisis, which continues to be quite prevalent. Many people, particularly younger generations, have found that the concept of home ownership, which was long considered a fundamental component of the Canadian dream, has become an elusive reality. This is especially true for younger generations. Some large cities, such as Toronto and Vancouver, have experienced rises in housing prices that are greater than 300%. This has caused housing prices to skyrocket throughout the course of the preceding 2 decades. On the other hand, the rate of increase in salaries has stayed essentially stable. As a consequence of this difference, members of Generation Z and Millennials are finding that they are more priced out of the market. This has resulted in significant issues for both of these generations. A survey that was conducted not too long ago discovered that the proportion of millennials who are between the ages of 25 and 34 and who own their own homes has declined by more than 10% when compared to the rates of the generations that came before themselves. Tenants are in a situation that is equally as precarious as homeowners. While rents in key locations are rising out of control, vacancy rates are hanging around historic lows, with an average of barely 1.5% across the country. This happens at the same time that rents are skyrocketing. For instance, the monthly rent for a one-bedroom condo in Vancouver and Toronto is usually higher than $3,000. This is just one example. As a consequence of this, a great number of individuals are compelled to endure extremely long commutes, to share spaces that are congested, or to reside in lodgings that are not up to standard. There is a sizable population of Canadians with low and middle incomes who are compelled to invest more than half of their income to housing, which leaves them with very little money for other necessities. Because of this, the situation of affordability is especially difficult for these particular folks. Canada is experiencing rapid population growth, which is primarily being driven by record-high immigration and a tremendous increase in the number of overseas students. This housing crisis is made worse by the rapid population growth that Canada is experiencing. In 2023, Canada reached a new peak for the number of new immigrants entering the country, with over 400,000 new immigrants being accepted. Additionally, there were around 900,000 students from other countries who were offered admission. Nevertheless, despite the fact that immigration is necessary for addressing labor shortages and encouraging economic growth, the infrastructure of the country has been unable to effectively manage the influx of immigrants. In urban centers such as Montreal, Calgary, and Vancouver, the housing market, public transportation, and healthcare services are all experiencing rising levels of stress. This is especially true in the housing market. Students from other nations, who frequently arrive without a social support system, are more likely to be subject to disadvantages than students from other domestic countries. Many people report living in unsafe conditions, such as illegal rooming houses or crowded basements, as they compete for limited rental dwellings. This is because there are not enough homes available for rent. The reason for this is that there are not enough properties available for rent. In addition to the problems that are associated with housing, the economy of Canada presents several other challenges. Nevertheless, despite the fact that headline numbers suggest that the economy is rising, a sizable share of this expansion is concentrated among firms and the households that have the highest incomes. On a per-person basis, the amount of economic activity has remained steady, and the real incomes of a considerable number of workers have not been able to keep pace with inflation. This is a problem, considering that inflation has been on the rise. As a direct result of this, Canadians who are classified as belonging to the middle class are experiencing a gradual decrease in their ability to make purchases. A prevalent sense of financial insecurity has been contributed to by the fact that household budgets have been further stressed as a result of increased expenses for essentials such as groceries, fuel, and daycare options. The already high cost of living in Canada is rendered even more expensive by the limited level of competition that exists in significant industries. A good example of this is the fact that the cost of telecommunications is among the highest in the world. For instance, Canadians pay a considerable bit more for mobile and internet services than their counterparts in other wealthy nations. All of the fees that are linked with banking, the costs of energy, and the expenses that are associated with transportation are fairly expensive, which leaves very little opportunity for savings or spending on products that are considered to be discretionary. Many people have been forced to delay key life milestones, such as having children, purchasing homes, or retiring as a result of the difficulties that the economy has caused them to experience. This has led to a fall in the birth rate and an increase in the average age of the population. Employment, which was formerly a source of stability, is another area that is experiencing enormous change at the present time. Industry areas that have traditionally constituted the cornerstone of Canada's economy, such as manufacturing, agriculture, and resource extraction, have been drastically altered as a result of globalization and automation. These changes included the elimination of jobs in these industries. The mining, forestry, and oil and gas industries are all experiencing a decline in employment as a result of the adoption of more efficient technologies by firms or the move of operations to places with lower labor costs. This has had a disproportionate impact on provinces that are resource-dependent and rural, such as Alberta, Newfoundland, and Saskatchewan, where unemployment rates continue to be chronically high. These provinces have been hit particularly hard by this crisis. Over the course of this time period, the service sector of Canada's economy has experienced growth. Nevertheless, a considerable proportion of the newly generated jobs are insecure, pay low wages, and offer very little in the way of benefits or security. The healthcare system, which is likewise an integral component of Canada's national character, is also suffering pressure to a significant degree. The reduction in patient outcomes can be attributed to a number of factors, including the lengthening of wait times, the scarcity of available medical professionals, and the insufficient funding for existing institutions. This issue has become even more severe than it originally was as a result of the COVID-19 epidemic, which brought to light significant vulnerabilities in the system. There is a growing dissatisfaction and calls for institutional reform as a result of the fact that many people in Canada now need to wait for essential operations, diagnostic tests, or mental health care for months or even years. This is causing a lot of people to be affected by the situation. Inability to find a solution to these problems was rendered far more challenging by the political and institutional standstill. As a result of the many conflicts that occur between the federal government and the provincial governments regarding issues like funding for healthcare, housing policy, and infrastructure investment, the implementation of substantial action is frequently delayed. Efforts that are being made to address the growing housing crisis are being further hampered by the hostility of local communities to high-density housing schemes and urban sprawl. Despite the fact that Canada has a clear necessity for millions of additional units to keep up with the country's population rise, the speed of home construction is slowed down by bureaucratic inefficiencies and convoluted legislation. This is the case despite the fact that the country is experiencing a population boom. In order to properly address these complicated issues, it is vital for all levels of government and society to collaborate in a way that is both daring and collaborative. In order to find a solution to the housing problem, it will be required to make some fundamental adjustments to the rules that govern zoning. Additionally, there will be a requirement for increased investments in rental housing that is both affordable and purpose-built, as well as for enhanced accountability in the regulation of foreign and speculative real estate investments. Both of these things will be necessary. When it comes to revitalizing the economy, it will be necessary to introduce new policies in order to bridge the gap between workers who have been displaced and industries that are on the rise. These policies ought to include enhanced access to educational opportunities, initiatives for skill development, and transitional assistance. The reform of the healthcare system must give priority to investments in capacity, technology, and staff in order to ensure that all Canadians have equitable access to medical protection. This is necessary in order to guarantee healthcare for all. It cannot be denied that Canada is currently at a critical crossroads. The route that lies ahead will need the nation to make decisions that are tough to make and to commit to making changes to the system. This is despite the fact that the country possesses the resources, skills, and political will to overcome these issues. The growing disparities in income, opportunity, and quality of life have the potential to intensify sentiments of disillusionment among the residents of the country, which would weaken the fundamental foundation upon which the identity of the nation is founded. If quick action is not done, this potential will be realized. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.